All right, guys, welcome to our video lesson of this unit. I'm going to be going over this idea of color theory. So you may have heard it in a drawing class, painting class, maybe you've just seen it some other random videos, but I'm going to go over what some of the specific ideas that I relate to color theory are, so that we're on the same page. So my definition of color theory is the idea that there are sets of color that go together and that create a more unified look to artworks. We can think of how we use color theory to affect our mood, about how we plan our outfits, how we plan our blankets and our interior decorations, but color theory is kind of prevalent everywhere, and different people have different ideas on how it should look. But in the art world, a really consistent way for us to talk about relies on this initial tool called the color wheel. So the color wheel is a visual tool for organizing the colors of the spectrum. Now, we may or may not know that light is a wave and different wavelengths create different colors, right? And color is the outcome of light waves bouncing off of the surface of something, but that's really hard to visualize. This is much easier. So hopefully you've seen something like this, or this makes some kind of sense. I sincerely apologize if any of you are colorblind. Please reach out to me if you are, because this will be very hard to follow along with if you don't have the labels and you struggle from color blindness. So color theory, coming back a step, based on the idea that colors go together, and the color wheel is this basic visual tool for organizing these colors. So oftentimes a set of colors is called a color scheme. And these are different sets of colors, often based around where they fall or how they fall on the color wheel. So these are a similar representation of a color wheel with some different color schemes pointed out. You'll see where it says warm and cool colors, complementary, analogous, triadic, split complementary, and tetradic. And we'll be going over these today. Super basic level of color theory is that there are primary colors, secondary colors, and tertiary colors. And so this wheel has them split up into those three levels. So the primary colors, red, yellow, and blue, cannot be made by mixing other colors. We use these colors to mix all of these other colors. The secondary colors happen when you mix two adjacent primary colors, or sorry, just two primary colors. So red and yellow makes orange. Red and purple, or please excuse me, red and blue makes purple, or violet, depending on what you want to call it. And blue and yellow makes green. Now tertiary are what happens when you mix a primary and a secondary. So you'll notice that these get specific, more and more specific as they go. So we've got yellow, yellow plus red is orange, yellow plus orange is yellow-orange. So this is still a primary, this is still yellow, this is still a secondary, this is still orange. When you mix those two together, that's when you get those tertiaries. Tertiary colors are known by their primary plus their secondary colors. If you want to get really into it, some people will call them based on which color there is more of, but generally we're going to be functioning under the idea that they are equally mixed. So there's an equal amount of yellow to orange, which makes yellow-orange. Similarly, there would be an equal amount of red to violet to make red-violet, blue to green to make blue-green, and so on and so forth. So this initial piece of information, primary, secondary, and tertiary colors, are the level of mixing that's gone into making them. Next up, warm versus cool. Warm colors make us feel happy, warm, comfortable, cozy, right? We associate them with things like fire and the sun and magma, and other warm things, tropical climates. Cool colors are very calm and serene and can make us feel sleepy or even depressed. And I have the list broken down basically of red, violet through yellow, green are warm, violet or purple through green are cool. So this has way more than just primary, secondary, tertiary, right? We got some red, some yellow, some blue. But it helps you to think about where those breakdowns happen, because sometimes it might be kind of on the edge and you don't know, is it more warm or is it more cool? It's not necessarily important that you know warm versus cool. It can just help when we're talking about how the outcome of the piece is affected by the choice to use a warm or a cool color. For example, if I were to paint a snowflake on a mug, let's say, how would the outcome of it be different if the snowflake were blue versus if the snowflake were yellow, right? What do we associate with yellow snow? Now that we'll move on past that, similarly, if it were to be painted red, another warm color, what other associations or implications might it have? It's still the same snowflake, but now instead of being a cool blue to represent this icy wonderland, it's red. And what holiday is associated with red and happens to be when there's a lot of snow on the ground? Make you think of Christmas? Green might also lead you to think of Christmas, and purple it's just kind of out there. So warm versus cool isn't necessarily a color scheme, but it's still an important way to think about how color affects how we feel about a piece. Next up, we're going to talk about triads. Triads are 3 colors equally spaced around the color wheel. Primary colors are an example of a triad, secondary colors are an example of a triad, and then there's some more random combinations in between that don't have a name other than being a triadic color scheme. So if you take a second to pause here or whatever, you can count that there's the same number of spaces between each of these markers. So we can see that that's how these colors go together. This one can be a little bit more tricky to point out, but it's still really interesting to think about. And the reason why I have this one as our first set of color schemes is specifically because primary colors and secondary colors are themselves triadic sets. Next set, analogous colors. It's 3 to 5 colors next to each other on the color wheel. It's those colors that just kind of look nice together. Nothing really stands out. There's not a lot of contrast. They're just very unified and nice. I'm not going to spend too much time on this slide. So if you have a very large, complex, specific color wheel, 5 colors would not be unreasonable. If your color wheel is more simple and it's, just primary, secondary, tertiary, then you'll probably lean more towards the 3. Because otherwise you're just getting way too broad of a spectrum and it's not really a scheme or a set. Sorry if I'm going too fast, but you're always welcome to pause. Next up is complementary colors. This one's easy to explain, and you might even be able to think of some examples pretty easily. Complementary colors are colors opposite each other on the color wheel. So red has the complement green. Yellow has the complement purple. And blue has the complement orange. Primary colors are matched up with a secondary color, and then the tertiaries are interspersed in between. What do you associate with this color combination, red and green? How about this one, purple and yellow? And then blue and orange. Are there any sports teams, colleges or universities, any brands or logos? These are easy ways for us to get a lot of impact in not a lot of time. Complementary colors create a lot of great contrast. So where black is the opposite of white, that's where complementary colors happen. Red is the opposite of green. All right, we're getting there. 3 more slides. Split complementary. I have this one right after complementary colors because it's really hard to think about without that context of complementary colors. It is another set of 3, much like a triad, but the key difference is that a split complementary is almost a complementary color scheme. So where we said red and green were complements, to make it a split complementary, it needs to have the 2 colors around its complement. So complementary, red and green. Split complementary, red, yellow-green, blue-green. Pause the video for a second and pay attention to how it works on these other 3. These aren't all of the split complementary sets, but it's 4 to give you a good idea of how they break down and how they work. All right, I know this is going super fast. Pause these pages as long as you need to, as often as you need to, replay whenever you want. The last one is, second to last one is double complement or tetrad. Tetra meaning 4, double meaning 2, complement you know is a pair, so 2 pairs of 2 or a set of 4. You can combine any number of complementary color sets, right? You can combine purple and yellow and blue and orange to make a tetrad. This one is the same color scheme, just visualized in a different way. So you can think of it as a square, tetrad, or as an X, double complement. Same thing, different visual. And my last color scheme, monochromatic. It's a single color with all of its tints and shades, so ranging from light to dark. Okay, some new terms for you. A tint is a color plus white. So if our base color is this turquoise here, if you add more and more white, it'll turn white. And that is a series of tints. This is a monochromatic color scheme in turquoise, going from darkest or most pure to lightest. Next up is shades, which is a color plus black. So we have that same turquoise color, adding progressively more black. Tones are a color plus gray, so an equal amount of black and white being added to that same turquoise color. But you might have also heard tones as being a color mixed with its complement. That is also correct. The art world is kind of stupid sometimes. We have the same word for different meanings. I'm really sorry. This visual was really clean and easy to understand, which is why I included it. So tints, shades, tones. White, black, gray. The next word in this set is a hue, which is just a color. So turquoise is a hue, right? And then intensity. It's the purity of the color or hue. So this turquoise is less intense than this turquoise. Same thing here. This turquoise is less intense than this turquoise. We use it in the case of mixing it with complements, of diluting it with other colors, of diluting it with white, right? Or with black or with a tone. We want the purity to be discussed when we're talking about intensity. Please don't be afraid to go back and double check all these terms. I hope this made a good amount of sense for you, and we'll be back with another video later.